What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the XFactoryRC X6 cube build. Today we're doing a bag A, which is the transmission. So as you can see here, we've got all the old parts off the B4, including the slipper clutch. And then we've got all the new parts here for the 4-gear transmission, including the new case, the new outdrives with some bearings, and the motor plate. Reason for the new outdrives is the X6 cube uses the standard US measurement outdrives, and the outdrives from the B4 are going to be metric. So I believe if you're running the B4, you already have the standard outdrives, and the B4.1 and 4.2 use the metric. So they throw in a new set of outdrives for the X6 cube, along with some bearings and a shaft for the extra idler gear and some outdrive bearings. So I've already cleaned up the bearings off the old transmission, got those cleaned up, ready to go. Cleaned up the transmission case screws, got the thread lock and everything out of those. You want to keep those nice and clean for the new build, make it nice and fresh, nice and smooth. So let's get into it. Alright, the first thing we're going to have to do for this is going to be to disassemble the outdrives from the main gear on the old transmission. So we're just gonna use a 2mm and I had it right the first time. We're just gonna unscrew this screw from the outdrive. This will allow us to take it apart and get to the insides. You can see it just slides apart once you get it unscrewed. Go ahead and slide the screw out, making sure we don't lose any of these balls right here. Should be 6 of them. I count 6. A little messy here. Make sure you have a towel down. All the grease and stuff gets kept in there. Make sure not to lose any of these parts. There we go. Pull the other right drop. Now you can see both bearings came out with this side of the outdrive. Sometimes one of the bearings likes to stick in the gear, but we just want to go ahead and get those off. Set them aside as well. And if you can get the T-nut out, make sure you get that out. And that spring's gonna, there's a spring inside there where the T-nut was, that's gonna have to come out as well. You can use the screw you pulled out and try to get to it. There we go. And that should be all the parts from there. Now what you're going to want to do is we've got to take these rings off. Those will be saved for later because we're going to be reusing those. Or now you can replace them if your old ones are worn out. But now that you have the old outdrives down to just the outdrives, nothing else on them, we can discard those because those won't be used in the new build, which leaves us down to the rings, bearings, the balls, T-nut, spring, screw, and the gear with the balls in them. We're going to want to clean this all up real good. That way we're building the transmission to new status, make it nice and smooth, make it run good. We'll be utilizing the new parts in the kit to build the 4-gear transmission. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all this up, lube the bearings up with just a drop of bearing oil, and we'll move on to assembly. Alright, now that we've got everything cleaned up, we've got the bearings cleaned and lubed, we've got all the balls cleaned, the gears cleaned, it's time to start assembling this bad boy. First thing we're going to do is put the rings onto the out drives. Now, these are the old rings. I don't know if you can see it on here, but there's a slight groove on the outside of it. That's from the balls wearing into the ring. The balls are harder than the ring, so the ring wears. The balls should last longer than the rings. I'm going to go ahead and use the other side of these. That way we get a nice fresh surface for when we break it in. First thing we're going to do is I got a thing of, still have the Team Associated diff lube from when I built the B4. Just going to put a small dab on one side of each of the out drives. This isn't going to be used for lube or anything, it's just simply there to hold the ring in place while we do the assembly. So really just doesn't take that much, just a nice small amount. If you have any extra on there, just go ahead and wipe it off with a towel. Remember that the grease and lube and all that stuff is going to collect dirt, and dirt is bad, so we don't want to have any more than we need in there. You can see it push some out right there. Just go ahead and wipe that off. That'll hold these rings in place. Now what you're going to want to do is take the bearings that you've cleaned and lubed, and we're going to put one into the out drive. That way that's in there and ready to go. And we've got this main gear cleaned up, and the balls are still inside there, all clean and ready to go. We're simply going to place that over the out drive. And then what you're going to want to do is take your diff lube and put a small amount on each ball. It doesn't take much. So if you're looking at the picture in the instruction manual, they just put a lot of extra on there just so you could see it in the picture, so it would show up. But it doesn't take much, just a small dab on each ball. Any extra you have in there is just going to get flung around inside the transmission. So just a little dab will do you on each ball. And then I did this backwards from what they said. I started with the female out drive, but put the other bearing in, and then we can slide these two pieces together. You can see they fit just like that, and we can set it there. And now that I'm not following the instructions 100% in order, I've already put the out drive sides together, but I know that my male end is up. You want to put the spring and T-nut and slide them down, making sure the T-nut, the little flanges on it, slide into the grooves. And you just go ahead and push that down in there. And then the next step is going to be working with the thrust bearings. So we've got our screw, 2 washers, and the 6 balls. So for this step, we're going to take the bolt, stand it up on end there, slide one of the washers down over it. And with these washers, the same thing happens with the out drive or the diff rings. You can, I don't know if you can see it on here, but there's a little groove that formed. So for this one that we just slid down, I put the groove facing down. That way we're getting a fresh side for it. And for this we're going to use some grease. This is the black grease from Team Associated. Again, that came from my B4 kit. And we're going to put some grease on the washer all the way around it. These thrust balls, this whole system needs to be well greased, but again, we don't want any too much grease. That's going to cause it to collect dirt and cause it to malfunction. we're going to put some down like that. Then we're going to carefully place the balls in there, which can be tricky. If you have a magnetized screwdriver or something, that can help to pick them up. I'm just going to slide all 6 onto here. There's 3. And there's all 6. When you're done with that, you're going to take your other washer. This time, if it's a used washer and you have the groove on it, place the groove facing up. That way the new surface is down against the balls. And then when that slid down, any extra grease on there, you can go ahead and carefully wipe away. Being careful not to, you don't want to knock the balls off because you just got them on there. But that's set like that. So we'll get this grease out of here. Sorry about that, my dog thinks she needs to be all loud right now. Then what we're going to do is we can use our 2mm driver. And carefully slide this through the female end. And since I already have the male outdrive on there with the T-nut installed, we can go ahead and begin to tighten it down. You can see they're held together now. Now as far as tightening this gear down, you don't want to tighten it down very much at first. You want to tighten it maybe 1 or 2 rotations, and then spin them opposite directions of each other. This is going to help seat the thrust bearings and distribute the grease and lube throughout the system. So you want to do that every now and then. Every 1 to 2 turns. Go ahead and do it again until you start feeling tension on it. And when you start feeling some tension on the system, what you want to do is take 2 wrenches, place them in the drive slots of the outdrive to hold the outdrive still, and you want to spin the gear itself, which is easier said than done. And as soon as you feel that the gear is spinning the outdrives itself, you want to stop tightening it, and that'll be your starting point for breaking in the transmission system. So as you can see, it's really tough to spin the gear right now. That'll be my starting point, because at this point the gear is spinning the outdrives. So that'll be my starting point for break-in, and we'll move on with the rest of the transmission. Alright, so now that we have the diff assembled, the next thing we're going to be doing is actually putting the transmission together. What you're going to do is take your transmission case out of bag A, and you're going to want to separate the halves. So you got 2 and you're looking on the inside of them. You're going to take the new outdrive bearings that came with the kit and place them into the large slots on the bottom of the case. You want to make sure these are set in there properly all the way, where they're nice and flush and not sticking out. And then you're going to take the saved sealed bearings from the B4 transmission and place them in the upper slots of the case. Again, you want to make sure these are seated properly. Use whatever tools you need to apply even pressure and pop them in. See that those are sitting in there properly, they're nice and flush. Next thing we're going to do is take the top shaft from the B4 along with its spacer, slide the spacer over the shaft, and then you want to slide the shaft in. This is going to go in the side with the hole that allows you to slide it through, obviously. Make sure that spacer's on the top shaft, or the gear's going to be eaten into the transmission case. And the next thing is going to be prepping the 2 idler gears this time, since it's a 4-gear transmission. You're going to have 2 sealed bearings from the B4, and then 2 open bearings that came with the new kit. It's really easy. You just want to pop 1 bearing into each side of each idler gear. It should slide in fairly easy. So 4 bearings, 2 per gear, 2 gears. There we go. After that, we can take the 2 shafts, and pop the shafts into the transmission. Little holes in the transmission for them. You can go ahead and slide the gears over the shafts, make sure they mesh properly. The gears next to them should slide in nice and easy. You can see, you spin one, they all spin. They're meshed properly, no binding or anything. After that, we're going to take the diff assembly, make sure we have the head of the bolt up. We're going to put it in the left side. The transmission, like we have everything else, should slide in. Make sure everything meshes properly, and then everything should move freely when you spin it. You have no binding, and everything's going to work properly. Pretty much the same as every other transmission you put together. This is just the 4-gear, since it's a mid-motor car. Alright, well, now that we have all the gears in, all the bearings in, we've got the bearings in the other side as well, we can go ahead and slide the halves together, making sure the outdrive goes through the hole and everything seats properly, including the shafts on the idler gears. Push together and make sure everything, top shaft finds its bearing, idler gears again are seated properly. You can see that it's together and everything's still spinning smoothly. If you're having issues at this point, now would be the time to pull it apart and fix whatever's going on, since it's not all together yet. And then you're going to take the 440 by 3/8 cap head bolt that came in the kit. In the bottom corner of the transmission from the right side, we can go ahead and just tighten it down a little bit just to hold the halves together. You don't need to tighten it down all the way, just enough to grip the other half, that way they don't pull apart. Right, with the transmission itself assembled, now is going to be the time that we're going to take the motor plate here and get them both mounted together. There are extra holes on the plate, which I believe are this one, the far left, far upper, and then the uppermost one on the middle right here. Those are for, I believe, an optional heatsink you can get, and if XFactory ever decides to make a gear cover. The 3 holes utilized here will be lower, upper of the 2, this one, and then the inner left. So now would be the time, since this is aluminum, we're going to want to utilize some of the thread lock that you have. You're just going to want to put a dab onto the motor plate itself. If you put it on the screw, it'll wipe off when you slide it through the transmission. So just put a small drop on each hole on the plate itself. Doesn't take much. If we got any extra on there, we'll wipe it off after we assemble it. But you want to go ahead and slide the top shaft through the center hole. Line it up. Then you can slide the screws through the transmission. It should slide in fairly freely. Should. You can hand tighten at least one of them for now to get it held on there. If you happen to get a stubborn one like this that doesn't want to slide through on its own, just go ahead and screw it in. It'll make its way down. And we can go ahead and tighten these down. Don't have to be super tight. You want to make sure you're not going to strip out the motor plate, but you can also go ahead and tighten down that bottom case screw. And when that's all said and done, just turn it around, wipe off any excess thread lock you may have gotten in there, and then you're done with that step. Next thing we're going to do is install the slipper clutch, and then we should be done with bag A. Alright, time for the slipper clutch. I'm just reusing, this is the B4.1 slipper. I think the B4.2 had a switched up to the, I believe, the VTS slipper. But this is just going to be the typical 2-pad slipper. I've got a J Concepts Silent Speed 75 spur gear. So what you're going to do is take the first plate, slide it on to the top shaft, seat it all the way against it, like so. Then you're going to take your spur gear, and on the Silent Speed ones from J Concept, don't know if you can see it, but there's dots on the outside, or on one side of the spur gear. This is to help you identify how many teeth it is. So I'm going to keep that on outward facing side of it. I'm going to put one of the pads on the inside and then go ahead and slide that down over the top shaft. Of course, you want to make sure the pad stays in the gear. I'm going to go ahead and the transmission like so. Make sure to realign that plate so it slides up. There we go. Now that that one's seated properly, you can go ahead and take the other pad, slide it down into the other side of the spur gear, and take the other plate, slide it down over that. Then we're going to take the spring, slide the spring down over the outer plate. Take this washer that's got the groove on it, the groove side down so it slides into the spring, and then we're gonna take the nut, hand tighten it for now onto there. That'll hold everything in place. And then from there you're just gonna wanna tighten down the nut a little bit until you're at a starting point for adjustments, and once the full kit's built and you got wheels and tires on it, you can adjust it from there. So that is everything for bag A. We got the transmission mounted to the motor plate with the slipper clutch and spur gear installed. I want to thank you guys for watching. This is one of the first videos in the series. Bag A is the longest bag, probably the hardest bag, so everything should go a lot smoother and faster from here. Stay tuned, I'm doing the full kit build, so thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and see you next time.